October 15th, 2019. The Colorado Rocky Mountains. What should have been the happiest day of two people's lives became America's most terrifying unsolved mystery. A blood-stained wedding dress hanging on a chair, 17 champagne glasses arranged in a perfect circle, and not a single soul left to explain what happened. An entire wedding party, 17 people vanished without a trace from a mountain resort, 8,000 feet above sea level. Tonight, after 5 years of silence, we're going to show you evidence that's never been seen before. We're going to take you inside the investigation that baffled the FBI. And we're going to reveal a truth so shocking it will change everything you think you know about this case. Because what happened that night in the Colorado mountains wasn't random. It was planned. But by whom? And why? I'm about to take you on a journey that will make you question everything you think you know about this case. Because what the police found that night defies all logic. Welcome back to Crime Vault, the channel that doesn't just tell true crime stories, we solve them. I'm your host, and if you're watching this video, you're about to witness the most comprehensive investigation into one of America's most baffling mysteries. If you haven't already joined our community of over 850,000 truth seekers who refuse to let cases go cold, I need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. What I'm about to show you tonight has taken our team 6 months to piece together. We've interviewed witnesses who've never spoken publicly. We've obtained evidence that law enforcement tried to keep buried. Without your support, investigations like this wouldn't be possible. Trust me when I say this, you've never heard a true crime story like this one. You won't want to miss what comes next. Emma Claire Mitchell, 28 years old, elementary school teacher from Denver, known for her infectious laugh and her dream of a fairy tale wedding. Alexander James Rodriguez, 30, software engineer, met Emma at a coffee shop 3 years earlier when she accidentally spilled her latte on his laptop. Their love story was the kind you see in movies, and on October 15, 2019, they were finally ready to say "I do" in the place they fell in love with during their first camping trip together, the Colorado Rocky Mountains. Whispering Pines Resort, 8,000 feet above sea level, 50 miles from the nearest town, the perfect place for an intimate wedding, or as it turned out, the perfect place to disappear. Now here's what makes this case so disturbing. Emma and Alex didn't just invite random people to their wedding. These were their closest family members and best friends. People they trusted with their lives. People who should have protected them. None of them would ever be seen again. Let me introduce you to the 17 people who would never make it home that night. The bride, Emma Mitchell. Her sister and maid of honor, Jessica Mitchell, 25. A nurse who had never missed a day of work in 3 years. The bridesmaids, Emma's college roommate, Maria Santos. Her childhood friend, Olivia Chen. Her cousin, Rebecca Torres. Her work colleague, Amanda White. And her yoga instructor turned best friend, Lisa Parker. The groom, Alex Rodriguez. His brother and best man, Carlos Rodriguez, 28, a paramedic who knew how to handle emergencies. The groomsmen, Alex's college fraternity brothers, Tyler Johnson, Marcus Webb, and Kevin O'Brien. His cousin, Diego Morales, and his childhood friend from Texas, Ryan Mitchell. The family, Emma's parents, Robert and Patricia Mitchell, married 32 years. Alex's mother, Carmen Rodriguez, who flew in from Mexico City. His stepfather, Frank Williams, a retired police detective. 2 other guests, Emma's grandmother, Eleanor Mitchell, 78, and the couple's mutual friend, photographer Sophie Zhang, who was documenting the entire weekend. 17 people, different backgrounds, different ages, different reasons for being there. But they all had one thing in common. They loved Emma and Alex enough to travel to a remote mountain resort to celebrate their wedding. None of them would ever be seen again. Let me walk you through the last day these 17 people were ever seen alive. October 15, 2019, 4 p.m., the wedding ceremony begins. Weather is perfect, 65 degrees, crystal clear skies. The resort's events coordinator, Janet Morrison, later told police it was the most beautiful ceremony she'd ever witnessed. 4:30 p.m., Emma and Alex are officially married. Photographer Sophie Zhang captures the moment. It would be one of the last photos ever taken of them. 6 p.m. cocktail hour begins on the resort's main terrace. Resort bartender Tom Hendricks serves signature drinks the couple specially requested, mountain mules made with local whiskey. 7:30 p.m., the reception moves inside to the Pine Lodge dining room. 17 people sit down for what should have been the celebration of a lifetime. Now here's where things start to get strange. Multiple resort staff members told investigators that something felt off about the reception. The music was too loud, the laughter was too forced, and there was someone there who wasn't supposed to be. But we'll get to that in a moment. 8:45 p.m., dinner is served. Prime rib, garlic mashed potatoes, seasonal vegetables. The photographer takes pictures of every course. These photos would later become crucial evidence. 9:30 p.m. The dancing begins. Security camera footage shows the entire wedding party on the dance floor, seemingly having the time of their lives. 9:45 p.m. The last group photo. All 17 people gathered on the lodge's back balcony, overlooking the valley below. Sophie Zhang sets her camera on a timer and runs to join the group. This is the last confirmed image of any of these people alive. 10:15 p.m. Resort staff clear the dinner plates and refresh the bar. Night manager Patricia Wolf checks on the group. Everything appears normal. 10:45 p.m. The music gets louder. Other resort guests in nearby cabins would later complain about the noise. 11:30 p.m. The music stops abruptly. Resort maintenance worker Eddie Gutierrez notices this while doing his nightly rounds, but doesn't think much of it. 12:15 a.m. October 16th. Patricia Wolf returns to check on the group and secure the building for the night. What she found would haunt her for the rest of her life. Before I tell you what Patricia Wolf discovered in that room, I need you to understand something. What happened next defies logic. It defies explanation. And it's going to make you question everything you think you know about this case. Because the evidence suggests that these 17 people didn't just disappear, they were erased. And whoever did it left behind a message that law enforcement has kept secret for 5 years. 12:15 a.m. Patricia Wolf walks into the Pine Lodge dining room to turn off the lights and lock up for the night. The first thing she notices is the silence. Complete, absolute silence. Then she sees Emma's wedding dress. It's hanging perfectly on the back of a chair. No wrinkles, no tears, except for one thing, a dark stain across the bodice that wasn't there during the ceremony. Patricia later told investigators that her first thought was that maybe the bride had spilled red wine. But as she got closer, she realized this wasn't wine. It was blood. Now here's what makes this even more disturbing. The dress wasn't torn or ripped off in a struggle. Someone had carefully, methodically removed it from Emma's body. The back zipper was fully undone. The buttons on the sleeves were properly unfastened. This wasn't violence. This was ritual. But the dress was just the beginning. Arranged in a perfect circle in the center of the dance floor. 17 champagne glasses. Each one empty. Each one positioned exactly 12 inches from the next. In the center of the circle, 17 cell phones stacked in a neat pyramid. On the head table, 17 wedding rings, lined up in order from smallest to largest. And on each chair where the wedding party had been sitting, a single red rose. Let me be clear about something. This wasn't random. This wasn't a crime of passion. Someone took the time to stage this scene. Someone wanted it to be found exactly like this. But why? And here's the question that kept investigators awake at night. Where were the bodies? 12:28 a.m. Patricia Wolf calls 911. The closest sheriff station is 45 minutes away. 911, what's your emergency? I need police at Whispering Pines Resort. Something terrible has happened. There's blood and everyone's gone. Ma'am, can you tell me exactly what you're seeing? The wedding party. All of them. They're just gone. But their things are still here, and there's so much blood. 1:15 a.m. First responders arrive. Deputy Sheriff Mark Coleman would later describe it as the most disturbing crime scene of his 20-year career. But here's where the investigation went wrong, from the very beginning. The local sheriff's department had never dealt with anything like this. They treated it like a missing persons case instead of a potential mass murder. They didn't secure the scene properly. They didn't call in federal assistance. And most importantly, they didn't preserve the evidence. By 3 a.m., 17 family members and friends had been allowed into the crime scene. The evidence was contaminated. Fingerprints were everywhere, and any hope of finding forensic clues was destroyed. But that wasn't the worst mistake. The resort's security system had been recording everything that night. 4 cameras covered the dining room and the main entrance. But when investigators tried to access the footage the next morning, they discovered something impossible. The hard drives had been completely wiped. Not damaged, not corrupted, professionally erased. Now let me ask you something. How does someone make 17 people disappear without leaving a trace, stage an elaborate crime scene, and then hack into a security system to destroy evidence, all in the span of 45 minutes? The answer is, they don't, unless they had help, inside help. I spoke with retired FBI profiler Dr. Catherine Hayes, who spent 25 years studying cases just like this one. In 3 decades of investigating violent crimes, I have never seen anything like the Whispering Pines case. The level of organization, the ritualistic elements, the complete absence of physical evidence, this suggests someone with extensive knowledge of law enforcement procedures. When I asked what she meant by ritualistic elements, Dr. Hayes explained, the positioning of the glasses, the cell phones, the roses, these aren't random placements. They're symbolic. Someone was sending a message. The question is to whom? I also spoke with Search and Rescue Coordinator Jake Morrison, who led the initial search efforts. We had 150 volunteers combing those mountains for 3 weeks. We used helicopters, thermal imaging, cadaver dogs. We searched caves, ravines, abandoned mine shafts. These mountains have claimed lives before, but we always find something: clothing, personal items, remains. This time, nothing. It's like they vanished into thin air. When I asked if it was possible 17 people could just walk away and disappear, Morrison was definitive. Not without help, not without a vehicle, and definitely not without leaving some kind of trail. These weren't experienced hikers. Some of them were in their 70s. You don't just walk 17 people into the wilderness and have them disappear forever. Dr. Michael Torres is a forensic pathologist who analyzed the blood evidence. The blood on the wedding dress belonged to the bride, Emma Mitchell. But here's what's interesting. It wasn't spatter pattern you'd expect from violence. It was more like placement, as if someone had deliberately applied it to the fabric. When I asked what would cause that kind of blood pattern, Dr. Torres said, "In my opinion, post-mortem bleeding. Someone moved her body after she was already deceased, and blood transferred to the dress during that process." So we know that at least one person died that night. But what happened to the other 16? The answer to that question lies in a piece of evidence that investigators overlooked for 2 years. Evidence so obvious it was hiding in plain sight. And when they finally found it, everything changed. 3 months into the investigation, detectives focused on the most logical explanation. Someone with inside access to the resort was involved. Whispering Pines Resort employed 23 full-time staff members. All of them were questioned. All of them had alibis, except one. Danny Lee Crawford, 34, maintenance supervisor, had worked at the resort for 8 years and had been fired 3 weeks before the wedding. Crawford's termination was related to theft, specifically stealing from guest rooms. But when investigators dug deeper, they discovered something much more sinister. Crawford had access to master keys, knew the security system, and most importantly, he knew the resort's layout better than anyone else. But Crawford had something else, a motive for revenge. Court records show that Crawford had filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against Whispering Pines Resort just 2 days before the wedding. He was seeking $500,000 in damages, claiming he had been framed for the thefts. Crawford's lawsuit specifically named resort manager Patricia Wolf, the same Patricia Wolf who discovered the crime scene, as the person responsible for his firing. Investigators theorized that Crawford returned to the resort that night to sabotage the biggest event of the season. But something went wrong. Maybe the wedding party discovered him. Maybe they tried to stop him. And maybe Crawford decided the only way to protect himself was to eliminate all witnesses. The theory seemed solid. Crawford had means, motive, and opportunity. There was just one problem. On the night of October 15th, Danny Crawford was 300 miles away in Denver, in a holding cell at the city jail. He had been arrested for public intoxication at 8:30 p.m., exactly when the wedding reception was beginning. Crawford's alibi was ironclad. But that didn't stop investigators from pursuing the inside job theory, because someone with intimate knowledge of that resort was involved. Someone who knew exactly how to make 17 people disappear. 6 months into the investigation, detectives uncovered something that changed everything. Emma Mitchell was worth a lot more money than anyone realized. Emma's grandmother, Eleanor Mitchell, one of the missing guests, had established a family trust fund in 1987. The trust was worth $2.3 million, and it had one very specific condition. If Emma died before her 30th birthday, the entire inheritance would pass to her sister Jessica, who was also at the wedding. But if both Emma and Jessica died, the money would go to their cousin Rebecca Torres, who was Emma's bridesmaid. And if all 3 women died, the trust would be dissolved and the money donated to charity. Now this creates a very interesting scenario. What if someone knew about this trust fund? What if someone decided that $2.3 million was worth killing for? Investigators looked closely at Rebecca Torres. She was struggling financially, behind on her mortgage, facing bankruptcy, desperate for money. But Rebecca had something else, connections to people who could help her commit the perfect crime. Rebecca's ex-husband, Martin Torres, was a former military contractor with specialized training in making people disappear. Martin Torres had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, working for a private security company that specialized in extraction operations. When he returned to civilian life, he struggled with PTSD and turned to alcohol. His marriage to Rebecca fell apart in 2018. But investigators discovered that despite their divorce, Martin and Rebecca had been in contact regularly in the months leading up to the wedding. Phone records show 17 calls between Rebecca and Martin in September 2019. Each call lasted exactly 3 minutes, just long enough to avoid triggering automatic monitoring systems. The last call was made on October 14th, the day before the wedding. The theory was compelling. Rebecca needed money. Martin had the skills to eliminate witnesses and dispose of bodies, and both of them had access to the wedding. Rebecca as a bridesmaid, Martin as her plus one. There was just one problem with this theory too. Martin Torres died in a car accident in Phoenix, Arizona on October 10th, 5 days before the wedding. His funeral was held on October 15th, the same day as Emma's wedding. Rebecca couldn't have been in two places at once. 1 year into the investigation, the FBI finally took over the case, and they brought with them a theory so disturbing, local law enforcement had refused to consider it. 30 miles from Whispering Pines Resort in the town of Cedar Falls, Colorado, there lived a religious sect known as the Eternal Light Ministry. The group was led by a man named Brother Thomas Whitman, who claimed to have direct communication with God. His followers believed that certain chosen ones needed to be elevated to a higher spiritual plane. The process of elevation, according to former members, involved ritual sacrifice. Now, I know what you're thinking, this sounds like something out of a horror movie, but the FBI took this theory seriously for a very specific reason. The evidence left at the crime scene matched Eternal Light Ministry rituals exactly. The circle of champagne glasses represented the circle of eternity. The pyramid of cell phones symbolized the mountain of communication with the divine. And the red roses, they were the flowers of transition, representing the passage from earthly life to spiritual existence. I spoke with a former member of the Eternal Light Ministry who agreed to speak anonymously. Brother Thomas always said that groups of believers who died together would achieve the highest level of paradise. He called it collective elevation. I left the group in 2018, but I heard rumors that they were planning something big. When I asked what kind of something big, the former member explained, a mass elevation. Thomas believed that if he could elevate enough pure souls at once, it would trigger the second coming of Christ. He was looking for the perfect group, people with strong love bonds, people who were pure of heart, exactly like a wedding party. The FBI raided the Eternal Light Ministry compound on March 15, 2020. They found evidence of ritualistic activities, weapons, and most disturbing of all, detailed surveillance photos of Emma and Alex's engagement party. Brother Thomas Whitman and 12 of his followers were arrested on various charges. But when questioned about the Whispering Pines disappearances, they all said the same thing. The chosen ones have been elevated. They are with God now. Their earthly bodies were no longer needed. When FBI agents asked where the bodies were, Thomas replied, there are no bodies, only spirits, ascending to paradise. Thomas Whitman was eventually sentenced to 15 years in federal prison on weapons and fraud charges, but he was never charged with the disappearances. Why? Because despite all the circumstantial evidence, the FBI couldn't prove that the Eternal Light Ministry was actually responsible. But what if I told you that one of these three theories is closer to the truth than investigators want to admit? And what if I told you that the evidence proving it has been sitting in a police evidence locker for 5 years completely ignored? That evidence is about to change everything. In January 2024, something extraordinary happened. A package arrived at the Colorado State Police headquarters. No return address, no note, just a smartphone and a flash drive. The phone belonged to wedding guest Maria Santos, Emma's college roommate and bridesmaid. It had been missing since the night of the disappearance. But this phone contained something that would crack the case wide open. A video recording of the last 3 minutes before the wedding party vanished. Maria had been secretly recording the reception, not maliciously. She wanted to surprise Emma with a behind-the-scenes video of her special day. Her phone was hidden in her purse, which she had placed on a side table. The camera was running when everything went wrong. The video starts at 11:27 p.m. You can see the wedding party dancing, laughing, completely unaware of what's about to happen. At 11:28, the music suddenly stops. Someone has unplugged the sound system. At 11:29, you can hear a voice, male, authoritative, telling everyone to remain calm and follow instructions. The camera angle is limited, but you can see people moving toward the back of the room. They're not running. They're not screaming. They're walking calmly as if they're following orders. Now here's what's crucial about this video. You can hear Emma's voice at 11:29 and 30 seconds. She says, and I quote, "We know who you are, this won't work." And then a man's voice responds, "It's already working, Emma. It's been working for months." At 11:30, the video cuts to black, but the audio continues for another 15 seconds. You can hear footsteps, multiple people walking, a door opening, and then silence. The FBI enhanced this audio using the most advanced technology available. They isolated 17 different sets of footsteps. They identified the voices of at least 4 different people giving instructions. And they made one more crucial discovery. In the background, just before the audio cuts out, you can hear a vehicle engine starting. Not a car, something bigger, a truck or a van. Someone came prepared to transport 17 people. The phone that mysteriously appeared at police headquarters contained more than just video evidence. Digital forensics expert Sarah Chen spent 6 months analyzing every byte of data on that device. Modern smartphones are essentially tracking devices that happen to make phone calls, Chen explained. Even when someone thinks they've deleted everything, the phone remembers. What did Maria's phone remember? GPS coordinates, timestamps, network connections, a complete digital trail of everywhere that phone went on October 15th and 16th. The phone left Whispering Pines Resort at 11:31 p.m. It traveled south on Highway 285 for approximately 47 minutes. Then it stopped moving at coordinates 37.1234-108.5678. Middle of nowhere, no roads, no buildings, just wilderness. But here's what changes everything about this case. The phone didn't just stop there. It was deliberately powered down at exactly 12:18 a.m. But before it died, it connected to a cellular tower and transmitted a final data packet, a text message, sent to a number that had been calling Maria regularly for the past 3 months. A number registered to someone who wasn't supposed to be at the wedding. The text message contained just 4 words, phase 1 complete. Proceeding. The recipient of that message was Danny Crawford, the fired resort employee with the ironclad alibi. Remember Danny Crawford, the maintenance supervisor who was supposedly in jail during the wedding? Turns out his alibi wasn't as solid as investigators thought. Crawford had been arrested for public intoxication. Yes, but he was released on his own recognizance at 11:15 p.m., exactly 16 minutes before the wedding party disappeared. Court records show that Crawford's bail was posted by an anonymous benefactor who paid $2,000 cash. The bail bondsman described the person as a well-dressed woman who seemed to know exactly when Crawford would be released. For 5 years, investigators believed that everyone invited to Emma and Alex's wedding was either missing or accounted for. But in March 2024, I received a phone call that changed everything. The caller identified herself as Jennifer Walsh, Emma's college friend. She had been invited to the wedding, but she never made it to Colorado. Jennifer agreed to meet with me, but only under specific conditions. She wanted her identity protected, and she wanted to tell her story without interruption. I was supposed to be Emma's 7th bridesmaid, Jennifer told me. I had my dress, my plane ticket, my hotel reservation. I was so excited to celebrate with her. When I asked what happened, Jennifer explained. 3 days before the wedding, I got a phone call. A woman's voice. She said she was calling from the resort to confirm my attendance. But something felt wrong about the conversation. The caller knew too much. She knew Jennifer's flight number, her hotel room number, even what dress she was planning to wear to the rehearsal dinner. Information that Emma hadn't shared with the resort. But the woman kept asking strange questions. She wanted to know if Jennifer had any family members who would be worried if she didn't come home on time. She asked about her work schedule, whether her boss would miss her if she didn't show up on Monday. It felt like she was evaluating me, Jennifer said. Jennifer called Emma immediately to ask about it. But Emma said she hadn't authorized anyone to call her. She seemed really upset about it. She said she was going to call the resort to complain. That was the last time Jennifer ever spoke to Emma. So why didn't Jennifer go to the wedding? She got food poisoning the night before her flight, spent the entire weekend in the hospital. At the time, she thought it was just bad luck. But now she thinks someone didn't want her there. Someone needed exactly 17 people for something. Not 16, not 18, 17. I think I was supposed to be one of them, Jennifer told me. Jennifer's testimony raises a terrifying possibility. What if the disappearance of the wedding party wasn't random? What if someone had been planning this for months, carefully selecting exactly who would be there? And what if the person behind it all was someone the victims trusted completely? In September 2024, the case took its most dramatic turn yet. Acting on information from the digital forensics analysis, FBI agents executed a search warrant on a storage unit in Grand Junction, Colorado. The unit was rented under a false name, but security cameras showed who had been accessing it regularly for the past 5 years. It was Janet Morrison, the resort's events coordinator, the same Janet Morrison who had called Emma and Alex's wedding the most beautiful ceremony she'd ever witnessed. The same woman who had helped plan every detail of their special day. Inside the storage unit, agents found something that made veteran investigators physically sick. 17 driver's licenses, 17 wallets and purses, 17 sets of car keys, and a detailed journal documenting every aspect of the disappearance. The journal revealed the horrifying truth. Janet Morrison had been working with Danny Crawford for over a year, planning what they called the perfect disappearance. Morrison had access to guest information, security codes, and most importantly, the trust of the victims. Crawford provided the muscle and the transportation, but Morrison wasn't working alone. The journal mentioned a third conspirator, someone referred to only as the collector. Phone records eventually revealed this person's identity. Brother Thomas Whitman, the cult leader who was supposedly in federal prison. Whitman had been secretly communicating with Morrison through encrypted messages, promising her $50,000 for each pure soul she could deliver. The wedding party wasn't randomly selected. They were specifically chosen based on psychological profiles Whitman had developed. The plan was simple but horrifying. Morrison would drug the champagne during the reception, making the victims compliant but conscious. Crawford would help transport them to a predetermined location where Whitman's followers were waiting. The staging of the crime scene was designed to misdirect the investigation and buy time for the victims to be moved to a permanent location. But something went wrong that night. Emma recognized Morrison's voice when she was giving instructions. She realized what was happening and tried to resist. That's when Morrison decided the plan had to change. Instead of keeping the victims alive as originally planned, she made a decision that would haunt investigators forever. Janet Morrison was arrested on October 12, 2024, 5 years and 3 days after the disappearance. She initially refused to cooperate with investigators, maintaining her innocence despite overwhelming evidence. But when faced with 17 counts of first-degree murder, she finally broke. Morrison led investigators to a remote location in the San Juan National Forest, 60 miles from Whispering Pines Resort. There, buried in 17 separate graves, they found the remains of Emma, Alex, and their wedding party. The victims had been killed within hours of their disappearance, but Morrison's journal revealed something even more disturbing. They had been kept alive just long enough to record video messages that were never sent to their families, but were kept as trophies by Morrison and her conspirators. Danny Crawford was arrested attempting to flee to Mexico. Brother Thomas Whitman was charged with conspiracy to commit murder from his federal prison cell. All 3 conspirators are currently awaiting trial. The families of the victims finally have closure, but the case raises disturbing questions about how well we really know the people we trust with our most important moments. The case of the vanishing wedding party will forever change how we think about trust, manipulation, and the people who hide in plain sight. Janet Morrison spent 8 years working at Whispering Pines Resort, planning hundreds of weddings, gaining the trust of countless families. No one suspected that she was capable of such horrific acts. The investigation revealed systematic failures in background checking, security protocols, and interagency communication that allowed this tragedy to occur. New legislation has been proposed to prevent similar cases in the future. But perhaps most importantly, this case reminds us that evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it wears a friendly face, offers to help plan your special day, and gains your trust before destroying your life. Emma Mitchell, Alex Rodriguez, and the 15 people who loved them enough to celebrate their wedding deserved better. They deserved to live full lives, to create families of their own, to grow old together. Instead, they became victims of a calculated, cold-blooded scheme designed to profit from their deaths. If this case has taught us anything, it's that we must remain vigilant, even in our happiest moments. We must ask questions when something feels wrong, and we must never stop seeking justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. What do you think could have been done differently to prevent this tragedy? How can we better protect ourselves and our loved ones from predators who hide in plain sight? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights help make our community stronger and our investigations more thorough. If this investigation opened your eyes to the darkness that can hide behind familiar faces, you need to subscribe to Crime Vault right now. We're the only channel that goes this deep into cases that matter. We don't just retell stories, we uncover the truth that others are afraid to tell. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and join over 850,000 subscribers who demand justice for victims who deserve to be remembered. Your support allows us to continue investigating cases that law enforcement has given up on, cases where families still need answers. Next week, we're diving into another case that will shock you to your core. A serial killer who's been hiding in plain sight for over a decade, using social media to select victims and evade capture. Like this video if you believe Emma, Alex, and their wedding party deserve justice. Share it with someone who loves true crime as much as you do. And remember, somewhere out there another predator is planning their next move. Our job is to expose them before they strike again. Until next time, keep seeking the truth, because the victims we investigate tonight are depending on us to make sure their stories are never forgotten. Justice for Emma. Justice for Alex. Justice for all 17 souls who trusted the wrong person with their lives. Thank you for watching Crime Vault. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and never stop asking questions.